Hello, everyone, and welcome to Yapisode 0 of It's Not You, It's Me podcast. I am DS Choi, your host, and very nervous and excited to be here. I'm nervous because I'm beginning something new, and I'm excited because I've been wanting to start a podcast for a while now. I've heard so many of my friends share with me that I have a good podcast voice, and they like hearing me yap about whatever I'm learning, whatever I'm doing with my life, and so I'm finally doing it. Hope y'all are proud of me. This is definitely not the first time I'm recording episodes for this podcast, and up until now, I've been hesitant to upload. It's like I'm a bit embarrassed to share something that's so unpolished. Like a voice in my head tells me these are like single takes, unfiltered, unstructured, and not yet fit for consumption. And yes, while that is true, it's also true that you might actually want to listen to that unpolished recording, or at least give it a try. I was going to record a whole new episode 0, but I didn't want that voice in my head to hold me back again. So I will now release this episode to the world, and one day I can look back to see how far I've come. So without further ado, here's the episode 0. All right, mic check 1 2 1 2. I'm supposed to be writing a podcast or scripting a podcast or recording a podcast, but I've been avoiding it like crazy. Why? I don't know. I think there's a part of me that wants to make it good. That's worth listening to. Would I listen to it for myself? I don't know. And right now, even just right now, it's like right afternoon, and I'm thinking to myself, kind of want to take a nap, and that feeling comes from avoidance, right? I would rather put my head in the sand and deal with it later, right? Deal with the problem later, but I need to make a recording. And so I said, why not? Let's open a recording app and just talk through my feelings about starting a podcast. Um, I've been wanting to start a podcast for a long time, and a lot of my friends, a lot of people who've met me um, and hear me talk said, "Dang, I would if like, do you have a podcast? You should totally start one. You have a such a podcast voice, and you know so much, and I'd be happy to listen to you." And I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm thinking about it. Haven't um, haven't pulled the trigger yet." So here I am with this awkward intro as I'm trying to figure out what I want to say. I don't have anything planned, nothing scripted, because in the past I've scripted and I've recorded certain things, and this is one of those things where, like, if you script something, it doesn't sound natural sometimes. At least for me, right? Like, I'm thinking to myself, I want it to sound like I have something to say, that I want to be knowledgeable, and it's all well prepped. So instead, we go in cold. So this is episode 1, I guess. This may never be released, but perhaps I'll put it in a blooper behind the scenes or something one day. That this is all how it started? Question mark. I mean, I guess, yeah. I mean, more about what is keeping me back from starting a podcast. One of them is the name. I mean, I'm trying to figure out a name, and I mean, there's all really good ones. There's fun ones. There's punny ones, and so many good ones. But something that's been sticking with me as I'm starting this journey is this phrase keeps coming back to mind. It's a season of my life where I'm starting a coaching practice, and it's relationship coaching and trying to support people. And the phrase that stuck out to me was the phrase, "It's not you, it's me." And so I was thinking of naming the podcast after that. Inyim, it's not you, it's me. And I mean, the reality is that's how I'm feeling right now. It's just like nothing about the world is wrong. Um, Whoever's gonna listen is gonna listen. It doesn't matter who listens, but I feel that because I wouldn't listen to it, or I feel, I don't know, that it's not good enough, right? Like all these negative things, um, I'll refer to those as monkey mind conversations. It's just things in my head where I am, like, I mean, I see this in all my life, but like, I am the like disqualifying myself from the start and the get go. Like I mean, I for sure have perfectionism standards, and I just want it to be good, you know? And so there's all these things that you tell yourself, like the audio is not going to be good. Do I put video on? But I don't want them to see my face. Like, I don't know if it's going to come out, like, look good. And so there's just all these things that is holding me back. And I'm doing that to myself. Like, the world has consistently told me that I should do one. Like, I should do a podcast and just talk about whatever. Maybe relationships, maybe about my life. Like, just share a bit about myself. And I just keep disqualifying myself before even trying. And right now, as I'm even recording this, it's not that bad, right? It's not that scary. I'm happy to, I guess, just talk to myself, but maybe it's like a journal, right? Just instead of in writing form, that I can just say what's on my mind. And I guess while we talk about journaling, I guess I can talk a little bit about that. I struggle so much with journaling. I also have a problem, like, again, like perfectionism strikes again, right? Like, there's this aspect of what I'm writing does not fully capture what I'm feeling or thinking or the situation. I'm always thinking to myself, like when I write it, I want to write it so that when I read it, I am reminded exactly how I felt. And so, I've definitely done it here and there. I usually try to journal. Funny enough, I try to journal if I'm on a trip to visit a girl. That's a story on itself. I'll try to include it in this episode. Well, basically, um, I mean, now I gotta share that story, huh? I can't leave it, but and it's a perfect example, right? And so there's a girl. I mean, so I live in a small town. Don't dox me. um, but the dating pool is not quite as well. So I'm using dating apps. It's not that easy to find people in a small city. Dating apps are a lot easier to use in a bigger city. And there's, I mean, obviously there's pros and cons to everything, but it's just a matter of meeting the ability to meet people through apps. It's easier through if you're using an app in a bigger city. Anyway, and so I'm like driving out of state. Like if I'm vibing with a girl, like we're chatting and we're having a good time, and then we're obviously like if you want to make something work, you still have to visit someone in person. Like it's not like you can trust their online persona, whatever they've been chatting with, because clearly people behave differently online than in person. Because online, obviously, you're hiding behind a screen. Like you can do X, Y, and Z. Like you're not accountable for anything in real life, right? And so I have to meet them in person before I want to move any further beyond just being friendly, right? And so go out of state. Like basically, it's a trip. I have to make a trip. I've done so many trips. Like I've dated. I've been seeing people out of state for most of my relation, or probably I should say all of my relationships. Honestly, I've driven like, oh man, during COVID, someone I dated far, far away, and then drove 14 miles to see them. I did that trip twice solo. Another one's closer. We can say 2 hours, not that bad. And there's like 6 hours or 4 hours. Like I've done it all, and in between. It's so funny because like there's a Korean TV show I'm watching, introduced by my mom. She's like, I should go on that show as I'm looking for someone to date. She's like, um, the show is called in English it's called I Am Solo, and in Korean it's called Na는 Solo, uh, which basically is the same thing, translated. And where was I going with this? We can scratch that, but either way, I'm traveling, going to see someone. Oh, let's rewind that just a moment, right? The reason I bring up I Am Solo is because in that show, the contestants, it's a Korean show, and there's average citizens who are, it's basically a type of, I don't know if dating show is the right way to put it, but it's a show that's encouraging people to meet and get to meet people. They go on dates. It's kind of like a retreat for couples, but like, or sorry, retreat for singles, like 6 men, 6 women, for like 4, 5, 6 days roughly. It depends on where they go and the whatever it is, but when they do self introductions, clearly they share like what they do, like how old they are, what they do, and where they live. And based on where they live, the conversation of long distance always comes up. If there's some sort of distance, and so they'll be like, like they ask questions after the self introductions. They'll be like, "Are you open to long distance?" And like mostly Korea, like the distance by it's like usually like roughly like I would say like 2 hours. Obviously, if you're driving, depending on like the traffic, because Korea is extremely dense, right? And so traffic can get really bad depending on where you are. But they're like 2 hours. It's too far for me. I'm just like, damn, dude. I've done so much long distance and I've driven them, and so I'm just like, maybe, but perhaps I'm just the one who's open to long distance than the average person, perhaps, and maybe because I did it out of necessity more than desire. Like obviously, I would rather be in person than far away, but based on my circumstance, I have no choice but to be open to it. And so, uh, clearly, everyone that I'm dating, that I meet on the apps, most of them are also somewhat in a similar situation where they're looking for someone, because there's no one really around the area of their small town. And so, if I match with someone in a big city, I'm always like, well, I'm always very transparent, right? You have to say that I'm long distance, and if you're not open to it, that's completely okay. But I thought that if you were open to it, then let's have a conversation. And so, so man, I go on such tangents, but I guess perhaps that's the fun. I don't know if it's fun aspect. Maybe it's too chaotic, but if you're still with me, great. So going back to journaling, right? So I'm seeing these girls far away, away from home, take the time to take a trip, reserve Airbnbs to stay like a few days, right? Just so that a few days to a week. It really depends. Um, Maybe just a weekend. Depends how close, how far, the investment that you want to make. Especially if it's the first time meeting, it's unclear like how long you should stay. And honestly, I'm not someone who really travels for sightseeing for myself. I am a lot bigger on sharing an experience. And so if I travel somewhere, I like want to spend time with someone. And if we're going to sightsee, then I want to do it with them. Like I personally don't care too much. Honestly, I don't even take that many pictures, and so maybe I sound like a serial killer. Anyways, so every day if I go on these dates, I try to journal like what happened that day. Like it's kind of like the beginning of if I were to like if you were thinking like How I Met Your Mother, like that TV show or something, is this some storytelling to tell, like and get a good memory for myself of how it all started. And that's not the easiest for me because again, like I want it to be romantic. I want it to have a good memory and nostalgic. So like try to include all the details, like and it's like I typically do it during like the day, like in the morning ish. Because during the evening, like if the date is if the person I'm seeing is off of work, we're spending like the evening, like we go out to eat or like spending time together, whatever activity that we're doing, right? And then in the mornings, then I would after I wake up, um, because clearly like we're like it's not like I'm staying at the date's place. At least I'm not like that. And so it's just very cordial, polite, and just getting to know each other. And at my Airbnb the next morning when I wake up after, I don't know, whether it's before or after breakfast, I just get to writing, try to write a little bit. And then after I'm done writing, I'm always so drained. So this whole story right now is just to say that journal drains me out because I really want to capture the moment. And so like how I'm feeling, what was said, the kind of conversations that we had, what did we discuss? And then obviously it gets harder if you're having intense, I don't know if intense is the right word, but perhaps more intentional conversation about your dates, right? Like, because if you've been talking with someone on the app for a long time and you finally meet them in person, then you kind of want to get like, you may have had more serious conversations through the app, but obviously it's a lot easier to have more serious conversations and dialogue, like back and forth, right? It's like in that moment, you can ask questions, you can share. It's a very simple, I don't know if simple is the right word, but an easier back and forth than if you were to like wait on a text message. And so I also prefer to like do a phone call. And it's kind of interesting too in that dynamic because I can completely understand why people wouldn't want to give up their phone numbers and stuff because people don't respect your time, your privacy. They might be demanding. I don't know whatever it is, they might call you incessantly. So I can understand it's a lot easier to just give like a social like Snap or Instagram, like to mitigate that. Um, I don't know whether I'm old fashioned, but yeah, I just rather have a conversation. And so uh, I guess maybe I'm the type of guy who texts like essays. I don't know if essays is the right word, but I write paragraphs. I don't want to do like a lot of little chats because part of me is just like, if that, maybe that's culture too. Now that I think about it, I try to avoid writing multiple texts because, and I just like if it's a separate conversation or a certain thought, I just press enter twice so that it separates the paragraph, makes it a little bit more organized, easier to read. But people, I don't think any of my dates have really commented that I write walls of text, but I do understand that that's not a normal texting. I don't know if texting etiquette's the right word, but texting style, because obviously texting is typically people want it to be like, well, I guess maybe I'm dating myself in terms of age, but growing up with the with early internet and instant messaging, like that type of texting was different because it was like you were talking in person because they knew that you were there. You were behind and sitting behind the computer. But with texting, it kind of depends too. Obviously, if it's a back and forth in that moment, then it creates that understanding that you guys are having a live quote unquote texting conversation. But for me, maybe it's because I grew up not having a texting plan. I didn't get a smartphone until I was in grad school, like my first year of grad school. That's like 23. That's like the first time I actually got a phone and a data plan that supported texting. Because I just used phone calls, everything before that. And it was much easier to reach me through email than it was through my phone, unless you called me. But texting, people found it very inconvenient that I didn't have texting. But I think I also lived that life where texting wasn't that important to me. Like I didn't care. I would rather hear your voice and we have a conversation. If it's really important, you would call me. But I do understand texting is very convenient for, like just like it. If it's kind of like the in between email and calling, where it's just like a lot more casual. You're just like, hey, what's up, and like you're okay with that not being a full conversation. That makes sense, right? Like, or you're just letting someone know, like, this is the plans. Like, if you had a plan to, I don't know, go watch the movie, it's just like, oh, the plan is we're gonna eat dinner here, and then we're gonna watch this movie at this hour, right? It's kind of like a simple way to. It's like leaving a note for someone, right? That's probably the best way to put it. You're leaving a note for somebody so that when they get to it, they get to it. But there's and I think that's the difference between or the ambiguity that texting has, because sometimes you're expecting a conversation that's immediate. You say something, you text something, and then you're expecting the other person to respond as soon as possible based on whatever activity they're on. Like maybe they're on Instagram, right? And you know when the last time they've been on it. Like it tells if you're, I don't know, like whether different, I guess maybe that's stalking. There's different ways that you can kind of figure out what people are up to on their phone depending on how much socials you share with them. And so when you text, there's certain expectations where you're like, I know they're on their phone, I'm expecting a response. And then it feels terrible when they don't respond. You're like, this. I'm trying not to swear. I keep it a cleaner podcast. But this bee, all right, what is she doing? Like, she's clearly like ignoring me. In Korean, there's a word for it called like you you shiba, the Korean word shiba, like a text message, like shibasо, which means like I think the direct translation is just like they literally just chewed it, and you chewed it, like shiba is chew. um they just chewed it, and what that means basically is they left you on red. That's what it stands for. Like in terms of what is the word? The contextual, cultural, the slang meaning. It's like they left you on red, and obviously that doesn't feel good, right? It's like you've been ignored, and so I think all of that wrapped together. I don't, man. I have such a roundabout of saying a lot of things, but I don't like texting. Uh, well, if I'm trying to get to know someone on an app, I don't like texting. Obviously, after we've established something, then like texting becomes easier, especially when you understand that like you have that kind of relationship where they're not going to ignore you. But obviously, with dating apps, like no one is entitled to attention, if that makes sense. It's just literally on everyone's own time, and that makes sense because dating apps are extremely tiring and extremely like energy. I don't know if intensive is the right word. Like, cause if you're really intentional about dating on a dating app, then you're trying to give the profiles a genuine opportunity to get to know them, trying to have an open mind. But clearly, all are like depending how your day was or your biases, like you have a threshold for what you have, like the bandwidth you have to give for each profile, each text message. Um, I mean, it's been also my experience that there's plenty of people I've given chances that didn't go well. Um, and there's plenty of times where I'm sure I was given chances and that didn't go well. Like it goes both ways. And so as everyone's trying to figure out how to find someone on an app, it's it's emotionally like taxing. Like it feels tiresome. And like if you're trying to be genuine the entire time, then it's just like people are I mean, I don't know if they're called energy vampires, right? But there's this idea that like, man, some people just drain you out. And texting, I try to maybe that's my fault. Maybe I should be more upfront about. Well, I am. I am upfront about typically on the apps. I said I would much prefer a phone call conversation. If you want to use a different app, that's completely okay. But it also comes off like that energy that you give off when you say that also sounds like I don't know, like tired. If you say to someone, "I'm not that," I don't know if like whatever phrasing you use. I'm not good at texting. I don't like texting. I don't blah blah blah. Right? I would prefer a phone call, even though they were being honest. The energy that gives off is often like it's not like you're not. I like I'm not worth a text. That's like the energy that gives off. um, even though that's not what you're saying, right? Like it's like kind of like a implied an implied feeling if you send that text. And so perhaps I haven't tried this. Maybe I should do it in the future because I am more than happy to text if necessary. I've done that plenty of times. In a similar way, I often ask on the app, like, "Hey, if would you like when I match with someone, I typically try to give them an option. I prefer to talk more intentionally, but depending on the matched person, I ask them, would you prefer to take things slow, where we just kind of talk like I don't know. It's basically small talk. It's just like, oh, like how was your day? Like, what did you do? Like, or like if you want to be slightly well, those questions kind of suck too, honestly. It really depends. It really depends. It feels like an open question, but the mental load that it gives the other person to kind of divulge that information is kind of a mental load. And that's why that also reminds me, like as kids, when your parents ask you, like, oh, how was your day? Like, well, how was school? You just say good, because to explain more things is a mental load. Um, I usually say, like if people ask you how are you, like like they haven't seen you in a while, like let's say like I go to church, right, and they'll be like, oh, like how was your week? I was like, you same thing, like you kind of just say good in passing, like it's just kind of like this ritual of just like I kind of care about you, but like it's just like a simple checkup. But I hate that question because I feel that there's so much things that went on that week, um, that like I don't know if so much is the right word either, but there's this generic feeling of like I could share more details, but I don't want to right now. And so the simple answer to give is my week is good, right? I joke around at church when people ask me that question. I said, "Oh, like I've been sinful. Like it's been sinful. I've been sinning this week." That's just something I say just for fun. Um, but depending on who it, I used to have a phase, maybe because I was being more of a rebel. There was a phase also when people ask me that question, I say, good. Would you like to know more? If you do, ask a more specific question. And most people kind of get taken aback by that. And it makes sense because that's not the normal uh, ritual, greeting ritual that people do, right? But I think following that aspect of if you ask a specific question, I'm more than happy to answer. I think part of that is if you ask me a specific question, then that mental load is shared because by you asking a specific question, I can give you an answer that's a lot simpler, right? And so in that sense, in the dating app, when I ask them, like, I don't really ask them, how was your day? What do you do? I'll ask them like, oh, like, uh, maybe I'm running an essay. One of the simple questions, oh, like very, like, it's a very important question to me, but it's wrapped up in a lightness. You say like, oh, like, um, I'm definitely more of a cat person. What do you think about pets? Do you prefer dogs or cats? And so there's still more of a information behind it. It's still very light. Um, and it's not like very, I don't know, very personal. But not to say that like I'm sure there's people who are just like, oh, like if clearly, like, if you're a pet owner and they say they don't like your pet, definitely, like, that's a red flag, right? Like, not, I don't know if the red flag's the right word, but like not negotiable. It's just like clearly you want your partner to get along with your pet, because pets are awesome, right? I guess it also depends what kind of pet it is. Like if it's a bird, if it's a reptile, if it's insects, uh, people people have different tolerances for what kind of pets they have. But the classic ones, right? Dog or cat. That's pretty classic. Pretty harmless to ask what you prefer, and you might see it in their photo. And so if that's the case, you can also have an easy in. If it's in their photo, just be like, oh, what kind of cat do you have? What kind of dog do you have? What's their name? Is it he or she? How long have you had them? How old they are? Like, very easy, chill conversation, chill opener. I guess another one that people might feel mental load is like, oh, like, what do you do for fun? And that's a simple question. I don't think that's that much of a mental load, but perhaps a better way to phrase it could be, I don't know. I usually ask like, is there something fun that you've done recently? And so, because honestly, even if you have a hobby that you might like to do, you may not have been doing that. That could be another conversation later. You can be like, oh, like, what is something that you've been wanting to do, right? And so, depending on how you ask the question, I can definitely see like there's a mental load aspect that people don't want to respond to, even though they're very like innocent, very neutral, and like just you're just genuinely curious. But I can understand on a dating app that it can create a mental load where the person who's answering the question doesn't feel like putting in the energy to answer it. I definitely feel that way too, depending on who I'm talking with. Because definitely, I've had small talks with people. Again, because I asked them, do you rather take it slow and like chill, just get to know each other, or would you have a lot more intentional like questions to ask? And so for the ones that are more like slow and chill, uh, I do tend to shy. I don't know if shy away is. I give them a genuine thing, but I definitely notice that I get more tired from small talk because it feels like it's not. Maybe that's also a me thing, and maybe it's not. Uh, it's like you're not really getting to know me. It feels like, I don't know. It's like a genuine attempt to start something, but also like I maybe that's really just a preference thing as I'm thinking about it. Maybe it's just a really just a preference thing where I'm like, I prefer to get to know you deeper. I think maybe that's also because I'm long distance usually too. Like I think if I met someone in person, we can vibe out. Like we can meet with friends. We can meet in an open setting. Maybe it's a mutual friend. Like it's just a lot more opportunities where we can create a setting in which we can get to know each other more naturally. Maybe it's the nature of dating apps in which I just want to be a lot more intentional so that, like, I don't know, someone used the phrase like ripping off the band-aid. Like there's an aspect of like, let's just see if we match, like, and then if we don't, we can go about our way. Obviously that creates a different energy. Maybe also that energy comes from because the fact that I'm older, right? I'm older. I'm in my 30s. And so like, it's not like I'm dating in college where like everything's like energetic and fresh and people are trying to vibe and figure things out. It's like very, I don't know, high energy, maybe chaotic, but it's not like people are trying to settle down and figure out the right partner. It's more like they're figuring out themselves and what they want, right? And so maybe it's because I'm in my 30s. It was more so like, let's let's see if we are good fits, and if we're not, let's go about our ways, right? We don't have time for this stuff. Like we don't have time to like drag this out. And so I remember someone I was talking with, they were straight up like, I asked them that question. I was just like, would you like to take it slow and just vibe, or would you like to be a lot more intentional? And then she responded, I would like to be intentional. And she wrote like a paragraph about Christianity and like her views on she was a progressive Christian and like talking about like her values and views and like what's important to her that we share as if we were to be like a future partner. Basically, what is important for her to share with our partner. And I was like, oh, that's great. That's like a great place to talk. Religion's one of the spirituality is often a deal breaker, non-negotiable for people, especially if they're devout. And if it's important to you, clearly you should talk about that, because if you're not going to get along, then it might not be worth the effort. I mean, it's also completely fair to say that inter religious marriages have worked. It requires a certain openness, sure, absolutely. But if it's something that openness is not what you're entertaining right now, if that's not the kind of person you're looking for right now, then I think it's fair to say you should be very upfront about that, and what that means to you. I mean, for me as a Christian, I also think like just because you say you're Christian doesn't mean you share the same values. And so I think it's extremely important to talk that out. And some people might say, oh, like don't talk about like politics or religion or things that are like money and work. But part of me is just like, well, so they say that because they feel that it will create such a large difference. And on a first date, that's like a no, like a no, like I don't know, faux pas. Like it's not what you're supposed to do. Like you're not supposed to talk about such serious things. You're just kind of trying to have fun and get to know each other. I think you can do both. Um, like for example, I'm a big fan of doing like for any dates. I would highly recommend where either party has an easy out of the date. If they're not feeling it, whatever happens, they can say, "Thank you for your time, but I gotta go." Like I think uh, giving people the chance to respectfully and politely exit is a great idea. And so for me, rather than doing meals, it also depends on the time of day, clearly. But I like to walk. Well, I also just enjoy walking with someone. Like walking and talking is great. I don't drink coffee, so cafe dates usually don't work for me. Or like I also don't really drink alcohol, so like bar dates don't really work for me, right? And so like walking and talking, like at a park, there's typically like a certain, how do you describe it, like a trail or a route that you can take. And after one route, you can, that's kind of like a safe place to say, like, what are you feeling? Would you like to continue? Would you like, and then from there, obviously, if they're tired from walking, you can also ask, would you like to go somewhere and like go to a cafe, get a drink and talk, like refresh yourselves? Is there like a bench that we can sit on to just also just chill and talk some more? And so for me, I prefer some sort of walking and talking, open space. Typically, other people are there. It's public. Um, and yeah, after you get to know each other for a little bit, you're happy to engage further or say, sorry, I thank you for the opportunity, but I'm not feeling it. Um, I'm gonna have to say goodbye, right? Like it's a if people were court, I don't know, if people could be kind and polite, like giving them an activity and space for them to do so, especially if you're meeting for the first time. And then on a more recent date, what I did was let's go out for a walk and talk, and if we vibe enough, we can get lunch together or something. Like this was we walked around 10 a.m. We talked for about 2.5 hours, 2 3 hours. I was oh, like I'm getting hungry. It's just like, would you like to continue this conversation over lunch? Which we did. And then after we talked even more during lunch. It was kind of awkward because obviously it's a public setting, but at the same time, the restaurant was kind of loud enough in which I felt that even if we talked just in front of each other, that no one like outside our table would really care. So beyond like the waiter, like we could still talk about anything that we wanted to. And then after, uh, same thing. You do a vibe check, like, oh, like would you like to go for dessert, like, and so we went to Froyo, and it was delicious. And I think like throughout these conversations, even how you negotiate like what you would like to do, um, you have plenty of opportunities to make connection last longer. Um, and if you don't have the time, let's say it was in the evening, you don't have the time, and you don't want to rush into anything. You just tell them like, oh, thanks, like I had a great time, thank you. I would love to get to know you more, and you set up another date. And if someone politely declines, that's fine. I think there's some people who thinks like there should be something more Like whether it's a kiss, a hug, or something physical to give you a better sense of like how the date went. Just if I think maybe it's my own bias and opinion, which is completely fine. I guess this is what this podcast is for. I think a lot of people, I don't know, like they play this game. I don't know if game is the right word, um, but there's clearly a lot of uncertainty. Like maybe you felt good about the date, but the other person didn't, and so maybe that's the hesitation. It's just like at the end of a date, it's kind of awkward because you're like, I don't know how they felt, and I don't want to look like an idiot if I liked the date and they didn't. But I think that again is the same thing I talked about before. There's this monkey mind conversation that we're having where we disqualify ourselves. We we say we before we even ask, we don't want to. Like and obviously that's part of like because rejection sucks, right? Or like I thought it was good and they didn't. Ah, that sucks, right? I think, but at the same time, the more we're open to that experience and recognizing that, like obviously I had a good time. Like full stop there, that'd be great, right? Like if I had a good time, then I am satisfied. If the other person is unsatisfied, that's completely okay. I usually compare a lot of relationship things to food. If you order something and it was good, or let's even better, like let's say you ordered something together to share, right? And if you say, "Oh, I like this," and the other person says, "I don't think it's that good," like that's fine, right? There's doesn't mean anything. Like you can enjoy that food, and the other person doesn't have to. In the same way, someone can enjoy a date, and you can say like, "Oh, I really enjoyed this date. Like, thank you for spending time with me." And the other person might be like, "Oh, like as much as like you're a nice guy or whatever it may be, I don't think this is gonna work out." And you say, "That's fine. That's cool. Like you don't have to." I mean, sure, like they might be attractive, they might be like someone that you're looking for, sure, absolutely. But I can definitely say that someone who's been on many first, I don't know if many first dates is the right way to put it, but plenty of dates and uh, plenty of meetings with people that were platonic, not romantic in nature. People, there's plenty of attractive people out there, and you like it's not like you're only attracted to one person, right? Um, even if you were dating someone, you can clearly say someone's attractive and not act upon it. And so you don't necessarily have to take it so personally, right? And um, so as much as the podcast title "It's Not You, It's Me," it goes both ways to both parties, right? And so when someone says like "not for me," it's more about them than you. Doesn't mean that you're unworthy or that you're unlovable. Sure, they might be flaws that you have, and I think you're fully aware of what those are typically. And there's the things that you can say that you want to work on. Absolutely. Uh, it's a matter of whether you're a good fit, whether it's timing, circumstances. It might have nothing to do with you. I know I remember there was a time when a girl confessed to me, like this was in school, and I was really trying to just figure out my life. And I was just like, I can't focus on a relationship right now when I'm trying to figure out my future career. It's not a hard no, but literally, it's a no in the sense of like, I have right now in my mental bandwidth, I have no space to consider a relationship right now. Like that's how I felt, and I communicated that. And so I don't know if it's more appropriate. I mean, this is even now. I would say it's not appropriate to string someone along. It's inappropriate to lead someone on. But I think clearly communicating that you have other priorities. If you'd like to wait, that's upon you. I'm not going to lead you on. I'm not going to engage in a way where I'm taking advantage of you. I think that's something that you would also have to actually do, like actually do what you say, rather than just say it and then act differently. If you're giving people mixed signals, uh, uh, don't do that. It's more than mixed signals. I think it's. I would say don't give them mixed signals, but you can banter. I think bantering is fine and that's fun, but mixed signals is not fun. And so just be clear if you're not looking for something, but you enjoy their presence, just say that, right? Banter away, have a good time, and be very clear about where you stand. And also make sure your physical behaviors also reflect that. Don't take advantage of people. Man, I'm talking about so many things. Maybe I should structure something, but for this first episode, you can just enjoy my stream of consciousness. And I'm trying to think how much longer I want to talk, but maybe I don't know. I mean, there's always stories that I can tell, but maybe this is a good place to stop. This is roughly 40 minutes right now, and maybe if I structure something, maybe if I have, I mean, I went on tons of tangents, but if there's something that you want me to talk about, maybe that's also helpful. Maybe you can help me share the mental load. If there's a type of story that you want me to share, maybe I can start taking notes about the topics that I could talk about. Any questions that you have, any scenarios that you can think of, whether it's about yourself, your friends, and you want to hear my opinion, I can talk about that. And so I guess that's it. I should have an outro, huh? What kind of outro should I have? Well, this was, I guess I didn't even introduce myself in the beginning. Maybe I'll edit something in or maybe not, but my name is DS Choi. I am a relationship coach, and I'm trying to start out this podcast. And so thank you for joining me. And I'm calling this podcast for now, It's Not You, It's Me podcast. I don't know if that's too long to say, but if I feel like if I just say, "Oh, welcome to Inyam podcast," like that's also, I don't know if that's gonna stick ever. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I'll think about it. But for now, I bid you adieu. Good luck, everyone, in your own dating journeys. Talk to you next time. Bye bye. Ooh, so some post-credit thoughts. It's my first time listening to myself since I've recorded it, and I noticed there were some places that I misspoke. My mind runs faster than my mouth sometimes, and so here's some corrections. My first smartphone with a texting plan was in 2013, not 2023. And one of the long-distance partners that I said was 14 miles away was actually a 14-hour drive away. So just to make that clear, I don't know how much it matters, but I just noticed those things. And most importantly, as a relationship coach, I support people to consider the possibilities of loving and fulfilling relationships in their life so that they see who is truly important to them and make them feel seen and heard. This podcast is an opportunity for you to get to know me, and if you're interested in coaching, feel free to reach out. Until next time, bye-bye.